From the EPR Creation Studio, this is Jason Staples. I'm bringing you Unconquered with Doc Staples. This one's going to be a short one today. As always, this podcast brought to you by EPR Creations, bringing you the best of internet marketing and website development for an affordable price. By Shenandoah Real Estate in the Research Triangle of North Carolina. By Luis Marquez of Momentum Realty in Jacksonville, Florida. By Garage Makeovers, the #1 garage remodeling company in South Florida, and by Justin Galloway of Benchmark Mortgage, serving Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky. I've got the best sponsors in the game, guys. Support them if you have any way of doing so, and let them know you heard about them from the Unconquered podcast. All right, everybody. This is going to be a short one today. We're previewing the Florida State Cal game. And quite frankly, I talked about this last week. It's hard to have a real handle on what this Florida State team is. But we did find out a lot about this team in the loss to Memphis, and most of what we found out wasn't great. The defense actually played up to snuff, but as I mentioned in the last episode, when you go back and you look at it on offense, it was worse than it looked on the initial viewing. So, in this one, they're expecting to have the 2 starting offensive tackles back, which will, go a long way if those guys are able to play and play reasonably well. But at this point, I have serious doubts. So we're going to start on the Florida State offensive side, just because that's where my mind is right now. I've serious doubts about what they're doing, what they're able to do up front. And, this Cal team held Auburn to 14 points at Auburn. Now, that's not a really good Auburn team, right? Auburn so far has not lit the world on fire, but they scored 73 against Alabama A&M and 45 against New Mexico. And frankly, I'm not sure Florida State would score 30 on New Mexico with the way things are right now. So, again, held Auburn to 14 points in that game, and demonstrated the capacity to hold up against an SEC offensive line. And just curious, has Florida State's offensive line looked at all like an SEC offensive line? I didn't think so. They held Auburn to 4.74 yards per play, 332 total yards, 121 on the ground. So the one team that they've played with a pulse on the road in the Southeast, that's how that game finished. And honestly, I'm just not confident with where Florida State is offensively right now to be able to do much more than that. And until shown otherwise, I can't really expect Florida State to do a whole lot better than what we saw from Auburn in that. So, 5 yards of play would be overachieving based on that expectation. Now, there are a number of variables in play here in addition that could change this. I do expect to see Brock Glenn in this game. Do I expect to see him actually take the first snap? Well, there's been stuff buzzing around about that I'm people expecting that to happen. And Glenn did get some first team reps this week, but I still kind of anticipate that the DJ is going to be the guy to begin with. But either way, I expect to see Brock Glenn in this game. Is that going to be enough to change the outcome on offense? Is that going to be enough to spark what happens on offense? On the one hand, you really don't expect so, because he hasn't lit the world on fire in practice. On the other hand, though, if you can just get him outside the pocket and run a little bit with him, and get him to where he's escaping a little bit and able to make some get outside the pocket and make some plays on the run, get the ball downfield from outside the pocket and that sort of thing. If there is any sort of pressure, that sort of thing, maybe that's enough to change things. But the truth is that the offense has not exactly been able to do the routine stuff, even when DJ has put the ball on target. and has been, fairly routine on his end. So it's hard to know what to expect when you do see Glenn in this. And like I said, it could suddenly, there could be a spark. You just don't know. There could be a spark that could change things, and then all of a sudden you average 6.5 yards a play and you score multiple times in the red zone and you walk away a victor. I'm real skeptical, and I'm now in well past the show me state where until they show otherwise, this offense is what they are, or is what they have been, and that's been pretty bad. You go through the numbers here. In 3 games, Florida State has averaged 5.02 yards per play, 5.05 yards per play, and 4.33 yards per play. And no, those aren't rushing numbers. That's overall. You look at rushing numbers, 3.16 yards per play, 1.31 per play, 1.54 per play. Guys, that's until they can run the football with a little bit more success, this offense has no chance, has no shot. And I do wonder, okay, if you do go to somebody like Brock Glenn, how much do you just try to run 11-man running game and just get a quarterback on the edge? And, if Toafili was healthier, do you just do what you did against Louisville and go, full, put a running back at quarterback and, go that direction, or Cam Davis, put him at quarterback and just run a bunch of 11-man running game. You're kind of at that point. Now, that's not really where you want to be, because that means that you're basically giving up on any chance of a real passing game. But, do you start doing some of that stuff as the way to try to jumpstart things? I don't think it's sustainable. But the bottom line is you can't win given all the other supporting pieces and what you need from the quarterback position with 3.16, 1.31, and 1.54 yards per carry. And once again, this is a California team that against Auburn gave up 4.03 yards per carry, 30 carries for 121 yards. So you can kind of do the math there. So unless something changes, unless something significant changes, you kind of expect things to carry forward with what these two teams have shown themselves to be so far. And the thing is, Justin Wilcox, the head coach for Cal, the one thing we've known about him for years is he is a very, very good defensive coordinator. That's why he got this job. And he's going to have those guys lined up well. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They play sound up front. They've got a few pieces that they're pretty good on at the outside linebacker position in terms of their sort of hybrid player. They're hybrid players there, and they do a good job of getting pressure there. And the other thing is they've got 9 interceptions on the season, including 4 against Auburn. Now, one was last drive, kind of a panic last minute thing. So 3 interceptions over the course of main play against Auburn, but they've got 9 total on the year. So they've been very, very opportunistic, and they've gotten pressure, and they've largely gotten those interceptions partly because they've been able to stop the run on first down. Florida State hasn't been able to run the football on first down, and they've done a pretty good job of stopping it on first down, and then they've turned teams over. Now, the one thing you will say about DJU, he doesn't throw a bunch of turnover-worthy plays. He doesn't put himself in that situation very often. So in some sense, here's one of the concerns I have coming into this. Is this one of the worst times against an opportunistic defense that has a bunch of interceptions to make a quarterback switch to a guy that, might not protect the football quite as well and to, roll the dice there? Or do you basically say, well, if you don't turn it over against them, then you're in better shape. And so you stick with the guy that doesn't turn it over, but also doesn't really do a whole lot to help you. But, the real concern is that Brock Glenn comes in and throws 3 or 4 interceptions and, you get blown off your own field. That's probably the biggest concern coming into this is if you're going to see Brock Glenn, but you're seeing Brock Glenn against a defense that does that stuff, well, that's not ideal. Either way, the real question in this game is Florida State going to be able to find life offensively sufficient to be able to be competitive in this game and potentially win it? And until they show otherwise, I'm not gonna give them the benefit of the doubt at this point. Now, on the other side of the ball, the hits keep coming because the matchup basically works this way. Florida State has struggled to stop the run. They've given up tons of long, grinded out drives where they just can't get off the field because they can't stop the run on first and second down. And then you play against a team that runs the football well. What they do, what they bring to the table, they bring in Jaden Ott, who was a preseason All-ACC running back. He's been sort of limited so far. He's not played as much, but supposed to be ready for this one. And even when he hasn't played so far, Javian Thomas, the replacement, is averaging 7.7 yards per carry. And the third guy, who's been the second guy behind Javian Thomas, is averaging 5.7 yards per carry. They ran the football against Auburn, guys. And again, that's not a great Auburn team, but it's still running the football against a legit SEC level defensive line and set of linebackers. Now, did they run it with a bunch of success? No. But is Florida State running for 34 carries for 99 yards against Auburn right now? Probably not. 2.91 yards per carry would be really good for Florida State right now compared to what they've had. That's a little bit below what they had against Georgia Tech. So that's where Cal was against Auburn. And Florida State hasn't been able to stop the run. So given that, unless enough changes there, and maybe Justin Cryer takes another step forward and Nicholson continues to take a step forward, maybe they're able to get what they need out of those guys. Maybe the defensive line takes another step forward. The bottom line is unless this Florida State team steps forward significantly, you're going to see essentially a replay of what you saw the first 4 weeks, which is a talented FSU team getting basically bullied at the point of attack on both sides of the ball, unable to convert for points on offense and move the ball with any consistency because they can't run it. And they're not a threat to, throw consistently enough to be able to offset that and pass to set up the run. And then on defense, Cal's first scoring drive against Auburn was a 7-minute scoring drive. Rinse and repeat. I mean, this is exactly what they're going to try to do against Florida State. 7-minute drive, 8-minute drive, milk that clock, run the football, and, escape after a low possession game. That's what they've done so far, and that's what they're going to try to do. And it happens to be exactly what FSU has given up so far. So, yeah. Anyhow, Cal's offense hasn't been great. They're only averaging just under 28 points a game, but and they've given up some sacks. But what they do, they just play sound football. The quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, 70% completion percentage, and he's thrown one pick. Takes care of business. Now, is he a major threat to run? No, but there are multiple times against Auburn where there's pressure and he finds a way to escape and makes a play on the run with his arm. And that is what it is. And they also with their receivers, they do throw some verticals, mostly back shoulder type stuff. And they do a good job of fighting for 50-50 balls. So they run the football and then opportunistically have your quarterback hit the open guy on a few third downs and back shoulder type things and win a one-on-one and have a few crossers on scrambles and things like that end up going for third down conversions, that sort of thing. That's the recipe that they've played with, and that happens to be the recipe that Florida State has lost to the first 3 games. So that's what you got. Now, does this mean that there's no real recipe to victory? Well, that's not the case. Florida State absolutely could win this game. Florida State could win this game by 28. In terms of talent, in terms of what they have on the roster, if certain things click. If Brock Glenn comes in and sparks the offense and suddenly they're able to throw it well enough to be able to set up the running game and you get things on track, things change. You change the momentum of your program, change things, looks different. That could happen. Is anybody betting on that? To me, the realistic path to winning this game for Florida State is pretty simple. Number one, Cal has been so opportunistic with those 10 takeaways, with 9 interceptions on the season. Number one, you got to make sure that you are not giving them short fields. You don't turn the football over. They've not been great in terms of their special teams. Their transfer kicker from North Carolina is a guy I'm pretty familiar with. Not the most accurate guy in the world. Pretty big leg, but not the most accurate. And, their punting is not great. And their punt coverage, not one of the best in the team, pretty average. And, they're not the most disciplined team on special teams, and just overall, they have some of those areas of the game where you can take advantage if you play disciplined, quality, solid football. So don't turn it over. Take advantage of some of the special team stuff where you should be at an advantage. And then defensively, if you can just force more third and longs, the difficulty that they've had against the pass rush, where they did give up some pressure against Auburn in particular, they're not great in the pass protection stuff. So if you can force them, if you can have success on first down, stop the run a few times, and you only need really to get that one tackle for loss or 1 yard gain or whatever. This is where, again, if I'm Adam Fuller, I'm rolling the dice a little bit more on first down in this game, just trying to get the win on first down. I'm willing to give up a few losses on first down. Okay, you got a 12-yard gain, restart, but we just got a tackle for loss. Now you're second and 11, and now I'm going to have my guys pin in their ears a little bit, and I'm going to roll the dice a little bit more, put some pressure on you. To me, what you've got to do if you're Adam Fuller in this game is you've got to put the pressure on to force their receivers, to force their players to win one-on-ones outside. Slot receiver, tight end, outside receivers have to win one-on-ones. And you minimize how much you're putting Lundy in coverage. Third and long, he can't be on the field. You go with your more athletic linebackers at that point. But what you've got to do is if you're Adam Fuller, put the pressure on, try to win first down with, more run blitz type stuff, get some opportunities to get into the longer yardage, and then turn your pass rush loose. And you got a chance to actually get some 3 and outs in this game. That's your path to winning on that side of the ball and getting the ball back to your offense. Offensively, first of all, again, don't turn it over. That's what they've capitalized on so far this year. Don't turn it over, and they've got to find ways to run the football on early downs with some success. And if that means that they're going to have to, get Cam Davis or Roydell or Toafili. If Toafili hadn't gotten banged up last week, he'd be the primary guy for me this week. But you've got to find ways to be creative in the run game to get some things on first down. And then they're going to have to find ways to get cheapies on throwing on first down. I think that's got to be a point of emphasis this week. Are there easy access throws? Are there ways of making it easier for your quarterback on first down to get some some free yards and just win enough to get some success rate stuff going on first down to be able to move it. And beyond that, I did see, Auburn got him on a double move outside. I think that this is one of those where you can pump and go. You can do some of these things to try to get some big plays early. Maybe you're able to do enough of that to get to where you're not playing from behind in this game. And if this team can actually play from ahead at some point, it'll be interesting to see how much that changes the complexion of what they look like and gets momentum. And I do feel like that in a lot of ways, this team is kind of a dam waiting to break, in that I mentioned it last week. This offense is so constipated. It's straining so hard while everything looks so difficult and nothing is actually coming out well, that if suddenly a couple things actually work and now you can build off of those couple things and you go, oh, okay, well, we actually executed that well. All right, well, here's what you do once they have to account for that. And then you get the next thing. Then all of a sudden, does the constipation end and everything flows out and flows well and smoothly and relief comes. I know this is not the greatest metaphor in terms of, what we want, what most people want to think about. But if you want to talk about what the Florida State offenses look like, it's pretty suitable, pretty appropriate. But that's really the path. And if you do go to Brock Glenn, I think you've got to run some, zone read type stuff. You've got to get him on the move. You've got to drop him and get him in places where it's stuff that he's really comfortable throwing. And if you can do that without turning the football over, and the defense takes care of business by winning some first downs by some of those more aggressive run blitzes and things like that, and forces them to beat your corners. You want them to beat the strength of your defense. This is a winnable game. And it's crazy to talk about. Like, this is Cal, right? It's a winnable game. No, this is a game you should be winning by a lot. But you do those things and all of a sudden things start to look normal. They're nowhere close to that. But it's all possible. It's possible. That said, it's not what I'm going to pick. Until this team shows me that they can actually execute and have any sort of rhythm or consistency on offense, I'm not picking this team to win another game. Not until they've shown that. So, end of the day here, I'm going to go with Cal winning this game. I'll go Cal 21, Florida State 16, which means that Florida State will have scored more points on this Cal defense than anybody else they've played. So, moral victories, folks, moral victories. But that's what I'm going with. Florida State 16, Cal 21. Go with 55% chance of Cal winning this football game. It all could change. Like I said, sparks could happen and the momentum shifts, but I'm not picking that until this team shows me that they're actually gonna play ball. So we'll wrap there. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you after the game. If you've been enjoying this podcast, please leave a 5-star rating over at Apple Podcasts and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Post and repost episodes on social media and tell a friend. And if you haven't left a review in a while, do it again. It really does help the visibility of the podcast. Before we go, I'd also like to thank my advertising partners once more. That's EPR Creations, Luis Marquez of Momentum Realty in Jacksonville, Florida, Shenandoah Real Estate in the Research Triangle of North Carolina, Garage Makeovers, the #1 garage remodeling company in South Florida, and Justin Galloway of Benchmark Mortgage, serving Florida, Tennessee, and Kentucky. You can also stop by the Unconquered Shop at unconqueredpodcast.com, where you can buy stickers, pins, magnets, t-shirts, and other swag. And thanks also to all those supporters over at Patreon, where I post video analysis and field questions for the podcast. I am especially grateful to those above the dynasty level. That is Andrew Garrett, Brian Leininger, Neil Cook, Casey Kidd, Chris Chartrand, Dave Blair, Hector Cartagena, Jack Horton, Jimmy Van, Jonathan Kennedy, Keith Cheney, Lee Caswell, Tyler Kashishke,
Vince Calandra, and Bert Bertoldi. You all are far more generous than I deserve. I'm really grateful. Thanks to you all. This has been Unconquered with Doc Staples. I'm your host, Jason Staples. Thanks for listening and thanks for your support. I made this.